Welcome to Engage Your Tribe, a podcast about the art and science of audience engagement. I'm Jeremy Shearer, founder and CEO of Tribal Knowledge Podcasting, and my guest is Jamie Downey, VP of Marketing at eLuma. Jamie, hello, it's good to see you.
Thanks, Jeremy. I'm so happy to be here.
Yes, thank you for being here. So tell us about eLuma.
Well, eLuma was founded 10 years ago by Jeremy Glauser, who really was seeking to make sure that every student was able to receive special education and mental health services, regardless of where they're located or shortages in school districts. So we partner with K-12 school districts to provide mental health and counseling, speech therapy services, occupational physical therapy, school psychology, as well as training for um, educators and parents, and then therapy management services. And the mission is really focused on helping each student or each child reach his or her full potential.
Okay, that's really cool. I mean, I know there's such a need for that, right? I mean, especially in like high school and college,
Absolutely.
anxiety, depression, all kinds of things. I mean, unfortunately, have just gone through the roof.
Absolutely. And even, the crazy thing as a result of COVID is the presence of those in younger children. And
Hmm.
I think across the board, it was more prevalent than maybe we realized beforehand. And the result of COVID is that it's brought that to the forefront. I think we could say that
Yeah.
about us as adults, right? I think it's just been something
Hmm.
that we realize is pretty prevalent in our society.
Yeah. I mean, I bet COVID probably exacerbated it for a lot of kids, suddenly
Yeah.
staring at a screen for 8 hours a
Right.
day, not being
Right.
with their friends,
Right.
right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
But definitely a problem that was there before and has
Hmm.
probably been, brought more to our attention. So,
Attention. Yeah.
okay. So now I know from a marketing perspective, you guys face a challenge that a lot of marketers face, and it's just cutting through the noise out there. But I think it's especially acute in your case because, as we've just been saying, this is a really hot topic. There's a
Hmm.
lot of information out there about mental health and solutions and providers and stuff. So, and I know that one of your strategies is thought leadership. So we're going to get into that, but I just want to start really basically by asking you, what does thought leadership mean to you?
The way I think about thought leadership is establishing yourself as a go-to resource for individuals in your target or your affiliated market, and providing value to them so that you become a trusted partner and someone that they can rely on. In our case, that may mean, providing resources and templates for therapists and clinicians, or it might be infographics for parents or reports for superintendents. But um, really understanding that they may not need you now, but if you develop that relationship and you become that trusted partner with them, then down the road, when the need arises, you're the name that comes to mind and you're the one that they're going to reach out to.
Right, that trusted resource. Okay.
Right, right.
So I remember seeing a study a little bit ago that about thought leadership,
Mhm.
and one of the findings was that decision makers really do value good thought leadership content, but they have trouble finding really good content. They
Mhm.
say they ranked like only a very small percentage of what they see as really good, meaning
Right.
that the rest is like just okay to not good at all, right?
Uh-huh.
So the challenge is not just cutting through, but actually cutting through with really good content that's going to engage your specific audience. So what has been your a key part of your strategy for not just putting stuff out there, but creating really high quality thought leadership content that's really going to engage people in the way that you want them to be engaged?
Well, I think you have to make it useful, timely, relevant, consumable, and you have to make it targeted. And the only way that you're going to do that is to talk to your the segments of your market and your decision makers and your influencers, and you need to really understand what are the challenges they're facing, what do they need, And then from there, you craft different resources for the different segments. And I think looking at the idea of consumable, right? I just, you think about our educators who are superheroes, by the way, but they, very little time. So if they're scrolling through Instagram or Pinterest and they're looking for a resource, making it something that they can take and use right away, very easy, not something that there needs to be a ton of prep, right? A 2 minute or 30-second professional development video that's a tip on how to implement XYZ that then I can go turn around and do right then. If it's a 20-minute video, they're not going to have time to watch it. So really understanding who it is you're trying to support and crafting the resources accordingly, and not taking a one size fits all approach.
Okay. So in that example of the 30-second video versus the 20-minute video, and I totally hear you, there's no way I'm not going to watch a 20-minute video,
Me neither.
right? Like, unless it's directed by Spielberg or something,
Right.
like
Right.
30 seconds, okay, I'll at least check it out. But
Yep.
but on the other hand, there's only so much you can do in 30 seconds, right? So
Mhm.
you can't really go in depth at all in a very
Right.
short amount of time. So how do
Right.
you balance that? How do you give people something with enough meat, that there's substance there, without making it something you have to slog through that nobody has time for?
Well, I think there's a couple of different ways you can do that. I think when you're developing the content calendar around thought leadership, are there series that you want to provide information about, to where each segment is but one part of a longer series that you get them interested and they're going to tune back in. The other thing that I like to do is use that 30-second video not as a teaser, because there's value in there, right, as it stands. But if they watch that and want to learn more, or it piques their interest, then here's a link to a resource you can download, or here's a link to another video that might be beneficial. That they make the decision based on what you've provided them, that, oh, well, I think, I think what the next thing that you provide me is probably going to be valuable too. So I'm willing to check it out.
Yeah, okay. So kind of parceling out information in like bite-sized chunks that
Hmm.
adds up to a greater whole,
Hmm.
but doesn't kind of give people like sticker
Overwhelm
shock.
them. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Can you give me an example of a piece of content that you guys have worked on that's really performed well?
One of the things that we did towards the beginning of COVID and everything happening virtually was really tips and tricks videos for therapists who hadn't previously delivered online therapy, and just little minute and a half or 2-minute videos around setting up the workstation, how to ensure students are engaged, how to communicate with parents about what the student needs on their end to ensure their success. Here are a set of resources, right? Just and having, I think there were um, between 10 and 12 of those videos, and all of them were short. But if I'm a therapist who's all of a sudden saddled with, you got to figure out how to do this, and you've never received any training on it, I can spend a little bit of time, watch the ones, watch them in the order that is most meaningful to me, and take that and turn around and implement it fairly easily.
Okay, good example. So, what have you learned about creating thought leadership content over the past few years? Like, what's something you do different now than you did last year?
You know, I think initially when thought leadership and content creation became something I believed in strongly, it was a differentiator, right? It was an absolute differentiator. And I think now everyone recognizes how important it is. So it's a must have. And the differentiation is in the value of the content that you provide. So understanding that just putting something out there, and I think this ties to what you mentioned with the survey, right? Just spitting out content isn't enough. You need to take the time and be thoughtful, which requires devoting more resources towards it. So I think when you ask what I do differently, it's really making it a focus of the entire marketing approach.
Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting. So it's sort of move right to the center of what
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
doing.
absolutely.
Hmm. So would you say that it's more important? Would you say that volume is more important, like the amount of stuff you're putting out there, or is quality more important, or as is probably the case, is it kind of a combination?
It's a combination. I think it's both and, right? I
Yeah,
Because you have to put out enough content to stay top of mind, to
right.
be somebody that they look for, to match the algorithms that make you show up in their Instagram feed or their right. But it has to be of good enough quality that they're gonna want to use it. So I do think that is why it has become such a focus, because it you need the quality, you also need the quantity.
Yeah, so you need to kind of find that sweet spot where you're
Absolutely.
putting out enough to stay top of mind, as you
Mhm.
said, but it
Mhm.
can't just be crap.
Right, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so um, how does developing a reputation as a thought leader actually help you grow the business?
In the most simple sense, right? It drives brand awareness, it drives engagement, it provides you with those multiple touch points that you need in order to convert a customer, acquire a customer. I think in the best sense, and in I don't know, maybe a more lofty view of it, right? Is that you become that trusted partner. You become that go-to. And maybe I don't need mental health counseling right now, but maybe I need it down the road, or maybe my neighbor does, or I'm a principal and a principal at a neighboring school, and so you have that word of mouth, you have that relationship where they trust you, they'll vouch for you, and they start to see you as somebody, or they see you as somebody who's not just trying to sell you something. It's somebody who really does care and who advocates for the people that we're trying to serve.
Hmm. I mean, I heard the word trust several
Mhm,
times there, which I think
mhm.
is important, especially in your industry, in any sort of healthcare, and mental health, maybe even
Yeah,
especially. You really need to trust
you do.
the provider,
You
right?
do. And I also think consumerism in general, right? Consumers are
Yeah,
smarter across the board. They're flooded with messages every time. So that relationship really is what drives a lot of it, and trust is so important to relationships.
yeah. And so if you're putting out content that people find useful and relevant, and you're doing it on a regular basis, and they come to see you not just as a source, but a trusted source,
Right.
that seems key.
Yep. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
trust is critical.
And then when the time comes and they're ready for your services, they already know, like, ah, yes, those are the folks, we've been reading their stuff.
Right.
They know what they're
Right.
talking about.
They know what they're doing.
They seem trustworthy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Trustworthy and knowledgeable.
Okay.
Yep.
Which seems really important, because especially if you're dealing with mental health issues, like you're a school superintendent or whatever, and you want to provide services for your students, you're not just going to go shopping like you would for like a new coat.
Right. Right.
Right? Like
Yeah.
it's very personal. Like you really have
Right.
to know, okay, not just what does the company say on their website, but who are these people? What do they
Right.
think?
Right. What I say all the time is, we're not marketing toothpaste, right?
Right.
People don't necessarily care a ton if it's Crest versus Colgate, right? But when you're dealing with kids, when you're dealing with emotion, when you're dealing with people, right? And what people are getting versus what they're not getting, it's a whole different ball game.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just more
And the
personal.
stakes, yeah, and the stakes are higher. Really and truly the
Yeah.
stakes are a lot higher.
Yeah. And yeah, absolutely. So what's your advice for marketing teams that, kind of like you were maybe a year or so ago, doing some thought leadership, it's part of the
Mhm.
mix, but they say, okay, we want to move this more to the center.
Mhm.
What's the first step down that path?
I think first, and I think many marketing teams, if not most, are already doing this, but really and truly get out there and talk to your target markets, your influencers, talk to them and really understand from their mouths what it is that they're living, so that you can provide those relevant resources. And then I would say, I think it's really important to understand the the process and ownership of who will drive the various content marketing pieces, because in a lot of cases there may not be a person who, especially making it, as you're starting out with it, you're not going to have somebody that is their main role. So how
Yeah.
are you going to, what is the workflow going to be, who's the ownership? And I think um you need that repertoire of content and a built out calendar before you start trying to, I think you need to have a number of pieces before you try to, say, launch a Pinterest page, right? So gather all of those, leverage resources that you have that you may or may not realize could be used for content marketing. For example, we have resources within our platform that we provide in a tool we call Backpack, that those are tools for educators. So starting to pull those, and recognizing you don't necessarily have to create everything from scratch. The other advice I would have is don't overcomplicate it. Everything you provide doesn't need to be a dissertation, right?
Mm-hmm.
It can be a one page in our, a graphic organizer, or it could be an infographic for parents on how to help their kid calm down, right? It doesn't need to be perfect every single, I mean, it needs to be great quality, but it doesn't need to be overcomplicated.
And I think that speaks to what we were talking about a little bit before about you do have to put stuff out regularly. And if you're trying to make everything like a breaking new ground with a brand new insider idea, that's probably not going to happen.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And you have to understand that they're looking for tools they can use right away, and there's a certain level of comfort in that, right? So once you have established that relationship with the customer or prospective customer, you can introduce innovative and new, but starting out, I think it's important to develop that foundation with resources and tools that they've used before, of the types that they've used before, that they're familiar with, that you're not asking them not only to use your content, but to learn something new.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Great advice. Well, there's so much more we could talk about, but that sounds like a good place to stop. So, Jamie, thank you so much for your time, for all those great insights. Really enjoyed talking with you.
Thanks so much.